Hi everyone, hope you guys are doing well. For today's video, I'm going to be crocheting a yarn over slip stitch oversized distressed jumper. And this is a project that I've wanted to do for quite some time. Because it's my birthday coming up, I decided to allow myself quite a lot of time to focus on this one project. In a way, this jumper is kind of like a scrap yarn project, just because I picked out some yarn that's just been sitting in my yarn collection that I haven't really reached for. And this all feeds into something that I'm trying to do in 2025, where I don't really buy a lot of yarn. Instead, I'm going to try and work my way through as much of my yarn stash as I possibly can, as well as just projects that I don't really use anymore. So for today's video, I'm going to take you guys through the process of me designing and crocheting this jumper. I've sketched up a rough idea as to what I want to do, and I just realised that a lot of the sketches that I do for my crochet garments are actually really horrendous. I'm not gonna lie, that's why I don't share a lot of my sketches, because a lot of them don't look great, like this one. Actually, you guys, I'm gonna be honest, most of my sketches are worse than what I'm about to show you, but this is kind of the general idea that I'm gonna work from. So I want the body of the jumper to be really wide and stretchy, so I'm gonna do yarn over slip stitch for all of this here and all of this here. And then for this ribbing, to make it nice and tight, I'm going to just do slip stitches. So yes, I'm making an oversized jumper using yarn over slip stitches, which is kind of crazy. I don't know why I'm doing this to myself, but I think I'm going to be using a 6mm hook. So actually, in the grand scheme of things, it shouldn't take me too long. And then all of these scribbles in the middle is just going to be me changing yarn colors kind of randomly. And then this detail in the corner, I want to do some surface crochet and do this kind of like distressed detailing on top. Anyway, let's get started on actually creating this jumper. Before we start any crocheting, I'm going to double strand this white and black yarn just so it's going to be a little bit easier for me to show you guys what I'm doing rather than using darker colours. Also, I've left around 1 meter of this white yarn so I can use it to sew later. Anyway, we're going to start off with a slip knot, and I'm going to start by chaining 7. 5, 6, 7. And I'm going to add a stitch marker here because this is going to be the ribbing on our waistband. So I'm just going to go ahead and get a stitch marker and put that in the 7th stitch. And from here on, all I need to do is chain the total length from my waistband all the way up to the top of my shoulder. So I've settled on a total of 75 chain stitches, including the 7 that I started off with. This is the kind of project where you probably want to overestimate rather than underestimate how many chains you need to start off with. Now I'm going to add my 76th chain to act as a turning chain, and I'm ready to start off with my yarn over slip stitches. I'm going to be working into the back bump of these stitches, so we'll skip the first chain nearest the hook and go into the second one, because remember this is a turning chain, and all we're going to do is yarn over, pull up a loop, and this loop that we've pulled up, we're going to pull through the 2 loops that are already on our hook. We're just going to continue this, 1 in each stitch, all the way up until we reach our stitch marker. And before I forget, you also want to get a stitch marker and put it into the first yarn over slip stitch that you did in your row. So I'm approaching my stitch marker now. Just take out that stitch marker. And now I'm going to change to doing just slip stitches. So obviously we've been yarning over, that's what we're going to change. So just insert your hook, pull up a loop and pull that through. So this is my 7th stitch. So again, I will put my stitch marker back in there, and now I'll do 6 more slip stitches. And once you've done your final slip stitch, you're ready to chain 1. And personally, what I like to do is I like to get this chain and tighten it a little bit before I then turn my work and continue with my stitches. Now from this row on, we're only going to be working into the back loop of our stitches. So I'll start off with those slip stitches again, this time just working into the back loop. And then I'm going to do my 7th slip stitch obviously get that stitch marker and move it back up. Now I'm ready to go back to those yarn over slip stitches. So I'm going to yarn over, go through one loop, and then do that yarn over slip stitch. I'm going to go ahead and continue the stitch all the way up until I reach that stitch marker on the other side. So I've finally reached that last stitch. So I'll do my final yarn over slip stitch, and now I'm going to chain one. And when it comes to the side that has the yarn over slip stitch, I'm not actually going to tighten this chain. I only do that when I do rows of slip stitches. Now we're going to turn our work and work in our first yarn over slip stitch. And straight away I'm just going to go ahead and put a stitch marker in there. This is just so I don't lose or gain any stitches. So now it's just going to be a pattern of doing yarn over slip stitches all the way until you reach your stitch marker, changing the type of yarn that you're using every so often. As a general rule of thumb, I tend to change my yarn colour every few rows, and I kind of vary this so it kind of has this sporadic random effect. And I join my yarn just with a magic knot, but you can join your yarn in any preferred method that you like. I'm just going to continue building rows the exact same way, where I'm going to reach my stitch marker and then change my stitch into normal slip stitches before I then turn my work, do the slip stitches and go back to yarn over slip stitches. So I have added a total of 20 rows of those yarn over slip stitches, and I'm now ready to add my neckline. So we're going to work all the way up to that final stitch doing those yarn over slip stitches. And basically what I'm going to do to create the neckline is I'm going to mirror the ribbing that we have on our waistband. So to mirror that, what I'm going to do is start off by chaining a total of 8. And that 8th stitch is going to be the one that I tighten. Then I'm going to turn my work and do 7 slip stitches, and I'm going to be working into the back loop because technically these chains count as the first row of slip stitches. 7, so I've done those 7 slip stitches. What I'm going to do is now this stitch marker is going to go into that 7th slip stitch. Now I've added these 7 slip stitches, all of my rows are going to be 7 slip stitches, and then the yarn over slip stitches all the way up until we reach the end, where we'll then do 7 slip stitches. So I continued adding rows to the mock neck part of the jumper, and I've reached the size that I'm happy with. So I'm just going to go back to how I was doing the rows before, with the slip stitches only on one side and me ending the other side with the yarn over slip stitch. Hi guys, so it's a few days later and I've done both the front and the back panels, so I thought I'd do a quick check-in just to show you guys how it's coming along. Not gonna lie, I think the panels are really cute and I'm really happy with how it's going at the moment. On top of doing the 2 panels, I've also experimented a little bit with the embroidery that I'm gonna do. My plan now is that I want to do a little bit more embroidery and then I'm gonna sew the front and back panel together. And I want to do that just because I'm not really sure how everything's gonna drape when it's being worn, so I kind of want to get an idea of that before I determine how big I want to make the sleeves. So my next step is I'll show you guys how I do that embroidery and then I'll sew everything together and then we can talk about the sleeves. What I'm gonna do is just use surface crochet to kind of outline a shape, and I varied the size of these stitches just to add to the distressed effect. And then what I do once I meet the start of this line is I'm going to leave around 1 meter or 2 of yarn and then pull that through to the front of the fabric. And then now what I'm going to do is use my creativity to just add a few single and double crochets to add to the distressed effect. And once you've reached the end of your yarn, you're ready to secure your end with a knot. and that's going to be your freeform designing done. So we are a few days later and I finally sewn together the front and back panel, and I've added a little bit of the embroidery. So I thought I'd show you guys how we're getting along. This is what it's looking like. I think it's turning out really cute. Don't get me wrong, the amount of ends I can see at the moment is definitely annoying me. I do think that I'm going to sew in some of the ends, but probably not all of them. And then the other thing that I wanted to check, apart from just kind of me liking it, is how it fits. So I'll try it on for you guys just so you can see. First thing that I wanted to check is the width of the panel, and I wanted the seam of me attaching the sleeve to be quite low on my arm. And as you can see, there's a lot of extra material here, so I'm happy with that. The only thing that I'm starting to think about is I made these panels quite long, but what I think is going to happen is that once I add the sleeves, there will be weight either side of this panel, so naturally it will stretch out more, which will make the panel shorter. But then also once I sew these two sides together, the ribbing will be more intact, so naturally the jumper will just sit a little bit higher on my body once it has that ribbing and that grip. So what I'm hoping happens is once I sew these two sides together and I add the sleeves, that everything will kind of stretch out and be a little bit more balloony and cozy rather than just like long and big. And then the other thing is I really like how the embroidery is turned out, and I definitely want to add a lot more. So my plan now is that I'm going to go and add a lot more embroidery. And then now I'm also aware of how long I want to make the sleeves. So I'll go make the sleeves and do some embroidery, and then I'll show you where we're at before we construct the final garment. Hopefully this will be our final check-in because I've just finished the sleeves, and I built these panels the same way that I did the front and the back, just without adding the collar. They definitely turned out quite cute. I did only use 50 stitches because I don't actually need my sleeves to be that long, but I did want them to be quite wide because I wanted to stick with that oversized feel. I'm gonna sew everything together, sew in a few of the ends. I'll probably add a few more of those distressed details. And with the magic of editing, we will skip a few days to when everything is completed. So now the jumper is done. Not gonna lie, everything came out really nicely and kind of as I expected, which for me, for kind of my first try at making something, isn't normal. So I'm happy with that. The only thing that I do want to mention is whilst I was sewing, I sewed the seams either side of the front and back panel together a little bit tighter than I did for everything else. Just because I want a lot of stretch in my garment, but that's kind of an area that I already have a lot of material to work with, so I don't want it to be too loose. If anything, I actually want it to be a little bit tighter. But that's just something that I kind of played around with. But anyway, without any further ado, we will try on the final product. So this is what it looks like on, and it's exactly the fit that I was after, where I've got material pulling around the bottom of the body and the sleeves of the jumper, but the ribbon kind of holds everything in, so it's not kind of oversized in length so much as just size. And I was worried about the sleeves because I do have a tendency to make sleeves that are a little bit too short, so making a short sleeve kind of made me think that I was making things especially too short. But not gonna lie, it looks really good. I'm happy that I didn't make these any longer because I think it would just look a little bit strange. And FYI, this is a project before it's been steamed. I don't really steam my projects, I just kind of wash them and let them do their own thing, which isn't really... I probably should change that. But yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I think this was a success, and I've decided that I'm gonna wear it for my birthday, which is tomorrow, so that actually worked out quite well. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and found it helpful. Make sure you like, comment and subscribe. I'll leave my Instagram, TikTok and Pinterest linked down below. I also sell written crochet patterns on my Etsy, and finally I opened a Ravelry, so I will leave both of them linked down below. I will see you guys in my next video and have a good rest of your day. Bye.